What is going on, everyone? My name is Jamon McKinney, but of course you can just call me Juice because that is my nickname. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, into the Juice Alert. If you have not subscribed to the Juice Alert already, be sure to do that right about now. You will not regret it. You can find the Juice Alert on YouTube as well as podcasting platforms. That includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that great stuff. If you enjoy this show, be sure to leave it a like on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on podcasting platforms and you enjoy the episode, be sure to leave this show a good rating and review. Like I said, these things definitely help me out right here on the show. And also share with all your family and friends because we would love to connect with more people here on the show and get the audience going a little bit more. Also, follow me on social media. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on TikTok. You can get all the latest updates about my personal life on those platforms, as well as updates and short clip videos regarding this specific show right here. I've put the links to all my social media accounts in the description of this episode and also on your screen here if you're watching on YouTube. So maybe take some time to screenshot and jot down those social media handles and follow me on social media. It will be greatly, and I mean greatly, greatly appreciated, especially if you follow me on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. All three of the platforms, like I said. Also, last but not least, follow me on MLBBro.com. You don't necessarily want to follow me on MLBBro.com because there's no specific button that says, oh, follow Jamon McKinney. Basically, what I'm saying is check out MLBBro.com on Instagram, on Twitter, and on TikTok. This upcoming MLB season, you can find a lot of content from me personally, as well as other content creators covering the game of baseball from an African-American perspective. We would love to have you guys connect with us at MLBBro.com. And also, you can check out the regular website and get some merch while you're at it. But without further ado, I want to jump right into the show right here, right now. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen continue to give us box office level matchups, not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs as well. This was the third time that Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen met in the playoffs. And unfortunately for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are now 3-0 versus Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. Josh Allen, the great talented Josh Allen, is 0-3 in the playoffs in his career versus the great Patrick Mahomes. What are our takeaways from this fact right here? I just want to ask the question, will Josh Allen ever knock off Patrick Mahomes in a high-stakes, high-end, significant playoff game? Will he ever do it? I want you guys to comment, whether it be here on the show, in the comment section, or on social media. Hit me up. I would like to personally know if you all out there think that Josh Allen can ever get over not only the Patrick Mahomes hump in the AFC, but the Super Bowl hump in general. Because it'd be one thing if Josh Allen was just losing to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, but we just saw Josh Allen lose to Joe Burrow last year in blowout fashion in Buffalo. So if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you have to be very, very uneasy about the situation of your current franchise. Do you believe your team is probably going to make the playoffs the next couple of years as long as Josh Allen is healthy and has a good supporting cast around him? Sure, that's fine, but we're talking Super Bowls here, right? I mean, a quarterback as talented as Josh Allen, you would hope to one day win a Super Bowl. So I personally don't ever think, or I shouldn't say I don't ever think, it is now on the table that Josh Allen potentially never gets over the hump in the AFC, especially if Patrick Mahomes is in his way. And again, you could say, oh, what if Josh Allen avoids Patrick Mahomes? He avoided Patrick Mahomes last year and couldn't beat Joe Burrow. Now, he would have eventually had to beat Patrick Mahomes as well to get to a Super Bowl, and then the Philadelphia Eagles, who were really, really talented. But you get the point. People can say, oh, this is a early Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady situation where Josh Allen will eventually get Patrick Mahomes. First of all, Peyton Manning was a much more decorated quarterback compared to Josh Allen in the regular season. And I just don't think this is an apples-to-apples comparison because I just think that there is somewhat of a gap between not only Patrick Mahomes' accomplishments as far as what he has done in his NFL career, but also just the way he plays the quarterback position. I mean, Mahomes might very well be the most talented quarterback of all time when you put it all together. I know Josh Allen can run the football like crazy, has maybe the strongest arm in NFL history. I don't even say that lightly because Josh Allen is a freak of nature, but the way Mahomes plays the position, the decision-making, the IQ, the feel for the game, the ability to not make mistakes and just put a team on his back, it's better than Josh Allen. So I have no choice but to believe that Patrick Mahomes is more talented than Josh Allen just based on those points right there and based on what I've seen. Could we be in a situation where Josh Allen is the Phillip Rivers of his era? Where, in Phillip Rivers' era, you not only had Tom Brady in front of you, you had Peyton Manning, you had Aaron Rodgers, you had Drew Brees, and you had Ben Roethlisberger, and arguably Eli Manning. I'm sorry, people, but Eli Manning's postseason resume, it laps Phillip Rivers' postseason resume. So where's Josh Allen going to fall in his era? A lot of people thought, it's Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Those are the two quarterbacks in the AFC that are going to dominate for years. I mean, have you seen C.J. Stroud? How talented he is? Are we going to ignore the fact that Joe Burrow has already been to a Super Bowl, carrying a terrible offensive line while in the process? I mean, we obviously know about Patrick Mahomes, I may be missing a quarterback off the top of my head, but the point is, look, I don't think Josh Allen will be the fifth best quarterback of his era or the sixth or the seventh or the eighth, kind of like Phillip Rivers was, just because that era of quarterbacks to me was the best quarterback era of all time. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, even a guy like Russell Wilson, who's going to get potential Hall of Fame votes, even though his career is kind of tailed off. That's the greatest quarterback era I've ever seen. As good as Mahomes, Burrow, Jalen Hurts even, Josh Allen, if you want to throw him in there, Justin Herbert. Those guys, at least up to this point, have not compared to the Bradys, the Mannings, at least Peyton and Rodgers of the world. They're just not quite on that level. But when you look at Phillip Rivers and Josh Allen, he very well could fall into that Phillip Rivers category because Phillip Rivers never once beat the top dog, Tom Brady, in his career. Now, Josh Allen has beaten Patrick Mahomes, the top dog in his era, but he's only done it in the regular season, has yet to beat him in the playoffs. And this is a year where Buffalo had home field advantage, had Josh Allen playing some great football, you had the defense playing well. This is a year where the Kansas City Chiefs were as vulnerable as ever, and you fall flat on your face at home. It was a very close game, and it just seems like Kansas City, as the game got closer and closer and time weighed down as the fourth quarter ticked and talked, Buffalo got more and more tighter, and Kansas City was more buttoned up, and they had the better quarterback, they had the better head coach, and they just have the heart of the champion, and they found a way to win. And Buffalo found a way to lose, despite how good Josh Allen played. And again, let me be very, very clear right here, because I don't think I was very clear about this right out the gate when I made these proclamations. I don't consider Josh Allen to necessarily be a playoff choker. I don't think you can even necessarily say Josh Allen is overrated after this game. Now, depending on where you have Josh Allen rated, if you thought that he was arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, then yeah, you're overrating him. But at least based on how I have viewed Josh Allen, I don't look at Josh Allen any more different in this game. In fact, I think that he put together a valiant effort. I'm not saying Josh Allen can't ever beat Patrick Mahomes. We've seen it multiple times in these playoff games. At some points, it looks like he's even outplayed Patrick Mahomes, even in a losing effort. But my question is, at some point, is Josh Allen just going to put his foot down and say, I refuse to lose to this guy, Patrick Mahomes, that's sitting across from me and is threatening my Super Bowl opportunities. Will Josh Allen ever beat Patrick Mahomes? History will let us know this in the next 5, 6, 7 years, because this is what is going to define Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes' career. These next 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, 9, 10 years. Will Josh Allen ever get it done? I mean, at this point, if he's ever going to beat Patrick Mahomes, the Buffalo Bills will need to make infrastructure changes. I'm talking maybe firing Sean McDermott, bringing in an offensive coach to help out Josh Allen. And at some point, the Buffalo Bills will need to find a way to close out and win these close games. It seems like Buffalo finds a way and an excuse to lose these type of football games, whether it be Stephon Diggs crying and not showing up when it matters, Josh Allen's turnovers, the special teams choking, the defense choking. At some point, Buffalo needs to find a way to put up and shut up and win these close games and beat these teams because, listen, Kansas City's not going anywhere. Houston's not going anywhere. Miami potentially has a chance to be really, really special if they can get their quarterback situation figured out. You know, Aaron Rodgers potentially is coming to your division the next couple of years, and he's going to potentially make some noise. So the AFC as a whole is really, really competitive, and Buffalo, they may be just stuck on the outside looking in when you look back on things. Will Josh Allen ever knock out Patrick Mahomes? It remains to be seen, as I said. So, reports are coming out that the Packers, the Green Bay Packers, are trying to make Jordan Love potentially one of the highest paid players in the NFL during this offseason, heading into the 2024-2025 season. Let me just say this right now. The Green Bay Packers should gather together more data before extending Jordan Love to a long-term contract. Ideally, if you're Green Bay, you should let Jordan Love play one more full season before you pay the guy. And let me tell you why. Because here's the thing. There's a potential possibility that what Jordan Love did was a fluke. Now, am I arguing what he did was a fluke? You know, throwing for over 4,000 yards, second in the NFL in touchdown passes, won a playoff game versus Dallas, arguably had a better first season starting in Green Bay compared to even Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. I'm not necessarily saying it's a fluke, but all I'm saying is I don't think there's any rush to pay Jordan Love because we've seen situations where franchises have kind of over-evaluated the situations that they've been in. You know, where, Daniel Jones, he finally shows he can be potentially the franchise quarterback for the Giants, and the Giants pay the guy, he wins a playoff game, he leads them to the playoffs for the first time in a while, and they paid him too prematurely, he gets injured, and just is not the high-end upside quarterback you thought he would be. You look at Geno Smith. It looks like Seattle probably paid the guy too early. I mean, heck, we've even seen in the past a guy like Case Keenum have an MVP-type season with the Vikings. There's a situation where Case Keenum was in the NFC Championship game with the Vikings, and people were potentially saying, maybe you should pay Case Keenum. You have to understand this. And again, I'm not comparing Jordan Love to Daniel Jones, to Geno Smith, to Case Keenum, who went on this crazy run with the Vikings several years ago, leading them to the NFC Championship game. Not comparing him to those guys. Jordan Love is his own type of player. I'm just giving prime examples of situations where quarterbacks can have a great year and be a great story, but eventually flame out. We need to fully know what kind of quarterback Jordan Love is before you potentially start rolling out the big boy paycheck. Is Jordan Love truly a game manager? Is he a game changer? Can he continue to be a great leader for Green Bay? If you've done it once, why can't you do it twice? So I don't think there's any reason why Green Bay shouldn't just sit back, put their feet up, maybe get a strawberry daiquiri or two, and just see how this plays out. I don't think there's any rush for why you should pay Jordan Love a crap ton of money. And listen, the expectations for Jordan Love, to me, need to be a little bit higher compared to some of these other quarterbacks. Because Jordan Love got to sit for 3 years and learn from the great Aaron Rodgers. So if you've been tutored by arguably the most talented quarterback to ever throw the football, I think my expectations and my standards should be a little bit higher for you. And this is only 1 year that Jordan Love has started. And again, if you look at the whole body of work, to a degree, it's been a success. But at one point, the Green Bay Packers were a 2-5 football team, and people were wondering, is Jordan Love a backup quarterback? Those were some of the claims that were being made about him. And then, obviously, he goes into Detroit on Thanksgiving. He dominates. And ever since that point, up until that 49ers playoff game, he was just scorching hot and never looked back. But this is the same Green Bay Packers team that barely beat terrible Carolina Panthers team. They lost to the Tommy DeVito-led New York Giants. So all I'm saying is, before I potentially make the claim Jordan Love is a long-term franchise quarterback, I need to see more than 1 year of a body of work sample size. That's how I feel about Jordan Love. You can cry about it if you want, but that's how I feel about Jordan Love. And I think Green Bay would be very smart to just see how it plays out. That's all you need to do. There's no rush here. Let Jordan Love continue to prove himself. And I think Jordan Love has a lot of potential, but only time will tell as far as what Green Bay does. They'll probably pay Jordan Love early in the offseason. And look, they've had the guy in the building for 4 going on 5 years. So they probably know more about what they have compared to me, who's an outsider that just watches preseason games, occasional practice clips, and obviously the in-game clips during the regular season. So they probably have more of an idea of what Jordan Love is. But all I'm saying is, be cautious before you pay the guy a little bit too early, potentially. So I want to discuss Brock Purdy, the San Francisco 49ers starting quarterback. I said in the offseason, heading into the 2023-2024 season, the jury was still very much out on Brock Purdy being a franchise quarterback. And the reason why I felt this way was because the sample size was very, very small based on the success he had in his first season as a starter in San Francisco. You know, you only had 5 starts to go off of, only 2 games that he started in the playoffs where he started the game and finished the game. We're not going to count the Philadelphia Eagles game where he got injured earlier in that game. So I wanted to know potentially, was Brock Purdy a legitimate Super Bowl caliber quarterback? Is he a legitimate franchise guy? Because when you look at the 49ers, they had everything in place. They have the wide receivers, the run game, Christian McCaffrey, arguably the best running back in the entire NFL. You know, Trent Williams is leading your offensive line. Trent Williams is going to get Hall of Fame votes. You have playmakers on defense. You have a great progressive head coach in Kyle Shanahan. And you had this several years ago with Jimmy Garoppolo being the quarterback. The only problem was Jimmy Garoppolo at times limited Kyle Shanahan and this 49ers team's potential, because we know Jimmy Garoppolo can be a good game manager, but when the game kind of, gets out of hand and he needs to make big time plays, Jimmy Garoppolo time and time again showed his true colors as just an average starting quarterback. Let me say right here, right now, Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's passed that test. He throws a better football. He's more accurate, makes better decisions. He's more athletic. And there's just more potential and more upside when it comes to Brock Purdy's game and how he operates. And Kyle Shanahan trusts Brock Purdy a lot more than he does Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, you can see it in the play calling. I mean, a coach will tell you all you need to know about how he feels about the quarterback based on how he calls the plays. If the head coach is asking the guy to make a bunch of checkdowns and just not turn the ball over and not unleashing the guy, that tells you, he doesn't quite trust the guy to run the Ferrari out on the highway by himself. But it seems like Kyle Shanahan has legitimate trust in Brock Purdy. And this season, in Brock Purdy's first full season as a starter, where he started all the games, he's in the MVP conversation. In fact, he's a top 5 MVP finalist finisher. Whether you believe he should be or not, that's the facts. He got MVP votes this season. In fact, he was breaking records. The highest single-season passer rating in a 49ers uniform for a quarterback this season belongs to Brock Purdy. We're talking about a franchise that has seen the likes of Joe Montana and Steve Young. And whoa, wait a minute, Brock Purdy? is breaking passer rating records, we have to ask the question, is Brock Purdy on pace to prove everyone wrong? I legitimately was impressed with Brock Purdy in that playoff game versus the Green Bay Packers because you had a situation where Deebo Samuel got injured early in the game. You know, you were without that star playmaker. The offensive line wasn't blocking all that well for Purdy. He was asked to make tight window throws, and he fell behind early, but he made the clutch plays when he needed to. And at first, people were saying, oh, Brock Purdy isn't as talented as Trey Lance. The 49ers should roll with Trey Lance. I was potentially in that boat because I felt Trey Lance was really, really talented. But Brock Purdy has debunked all those arguments. Oh, Brock Purdy, he's just an average quarterback. Brock Purdy this season played at a top 5 to 7 level as far as quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion. You know, oh, he's good but not special. Really? Are we quite sure? Because Brock Purdy is an MVP candidate finalist based on the voting system. Oh, in the playoffs, Brock Purdy, he'll get exposed. Brock Purdy, so far up to this point, is 3-0 in playoff games that he has started and finished for the 49ers. And if he beats the Detroit Lions, he is going to lead his team to a Super Bowl. Now, will he win that Super Bowl? I'm not so sure, but it's a data point worth noting if he does it. Oh, no Deebo Samuel. Brock Purdy can't do anything. Oh, he can't do anything without the Avengers. We saw with no Deebo Samuel and the defense giving up big plays versus Green Bay, Brock Purdy had great leadership and made high-level throws and put the team together when it mattered. He made big plays with his arm and his legs in that playoff game. And you saw Kyle Shanahan seems to trust Brock Purdy compared to other quarterbacks that he's had. Is Brock Purdy a little bit better than people are giving him credit for? Is he more than a game manager? I think there's potential that we should be having that conversation. And let me just say this right here, right now. Brock Purdy will need to continue to probably have a sustained level of success for a long period of time, because even if he makes the Super Bowl, people are going to say, oh, it's the Shanahan system, it's George Kittle, it's Deebo Samuel, it's Christian McCaffrey, it's Fred Warner, and Nick Bosa on defense. So Purdy probably is never going to quite get the credit he deserves because he was the last pick in his draft class. But let me just say, if Brock Purdy goes to a Super Bowl and outplays the likes of maybe Patrick Mahomes, maybe Lamar Jackson, I mean, at some point, people, we have to look at the data points and the production that actually happens on the field. No more myths, no more made-up stats. In the end, the Hall of Fame is based on truly, what did you accomplish? Now, obviously, you look at the talent of the player, but can we argue Brock Purdy is a little bit more talented than we realize? I mean, I think he's a little bit more accurate than people give him credit for, a little bit more athletic. I mean, I think he's a little bit underrated at this point and a little bit underappreciated. So I don't know how quite things are going to pan out for San Francisco. I actually do. If I had to give a prediction, I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. They'll face either the Ravens or the Chiefs, and we'll get a real opportunity to see what Brock Purdy is made of if he can get to that spotlight that is the Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Brock Purdy, it just seems like everything people say that he can't do, he seems to prove them wrong every step of the way. So I'm excited to see what Brock Purdy does come playoff time in the NFC Championship game and at this point going forward throughout his entire career. So the Lions recently won their first ever playoff game in 30 years, and they beat the Rams in that first playoff game. They went on to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their next playoff game, and now, what do you know? The Detroit Lions are one game away from a trip to Super Bowl 58. Several years ago, there was a big shift within the organization for the Detroit Lions franchise. They trade away the beloved Matthew Stafford, former first overall pick out of Georgia, had been the Lions quarterback for over a decade. But it was one of those situations where both parties knew they needed to break up. Stafford had been wasting away some of his prime years in Detroit, never really had a great, stable situation where he legitimately had a chance to compete for a Super Bowl championship. And you look at the Detroit Lions, they weren't going anywhere with Matthew Stafford despite how good he was. So they just decided to tear the whole thing down and start completely over. And so they traded Matthew Stafford away to the Los Angeles Rams, who were in a situation where they had all of the pieces to win the Super Bowl, except potentially the quarterback. It seemed like Jared Goff had reached his peak with the Rams, and it seems like Sean McVay was frustrated with his lack of growth over time. Look, Jared Goff was a good quarterback with the Rams, but never quite lived up to that first overall pick potential. And you were wondering, man, can McVay continue to hold this guy's hand? So the Rams needed that Super Bowl piece that was the quarterback to win a Super Bowl. So they traded with the Lions to send Jared Goff to Detroit, and the Rams get Matthew Stafford. And also Detroit sent some draft picks to, well, I should say, pardon me, the Rams got draft picks as well from the Lions. But let me just say this right here, right now. It is more than fair to say the Rams and Lions both are massive winners from the Matthew Stafford Jared Goff trade. For the Rams, it's a trade that was the difference in them winning a Super Bowl. There should be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Matthew Stafford was the missing piece. He was the quarterback that put them over the hump, that got Sean McVay and the Rams a Super Bowl victory. Stafford played well in that Super Bowl, out-dueled Tom Brady in a playoff game, played better than Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl. He put the team together when they needed to be put together, and Stafford won them a championship. There should be no more complaints about that. And people could say, oh, this trade crippled the potential future of the franchise. I disagree, because we just saw this year, the Rams, they made the playoffs this season. Last year, they didn't do so well, but that was because Stafford was injured. They had injuries on defense to the offensive line, but they retooled this year, and they've been a playoff team, and I see no reason why they're not going to be a playoff team next year in the next couple of years, as long as Stafford is healthy and Sean McVay is their head coach. Both teams, it seemed like, got what they wanted, because the Lions, they needed a completely big-time reset. They needed to get younger, and they needed to nail their draft picks. And they did just that. They got younger, they nailed their draft picks, and Jared Goff has been everything and more the Detroit Lions could have asked for. A lot of people thought, oh, Jared Goff, he's just going to be there for the Lions for a year or two. He's an expendable piece. They're going to eventually trade him and get rid of him. He's going to be a guy that just tutors the next franchise quarterback. But no, Jared Goff has proven a lot of people wrong, and Jared Goff is playing the best football of his career. It's very, very rare that you see both teams come out as such big-time winners when it comes to a trade. Usually it's lopsided in one way or the other, but you got to give the Lions and the Rams a lot of credit. Both teams knew what they wanted, and both teams have gotten exactly what they wanted. And wouldn't it be crazy if not only the Rams were to win a Super Bowl because of the Matthew Stafford Jared Goff trade, but also the Detroit Lions, if they were to potentially win a Super Bowl, if things break their way? That would be very, very awesome, and it'd be one of the best win-win trades on both sides in NFL history if that were to be the case. I'm excited to see how it pans out as time goes on. I believe Baker Mayfield should be the long-term franchise quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I get that Baker Mayfield is nowhere close to the level of talent that is, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, even a guy like CJ Stroud, I would take over Baker Mayfield. I think CJ Stroud just throws a much better football, has much more upside to his game based on the way he plays the quarterback position. But I look at Baker Mayfield, and Baker Mayfield is good enough to win football games. And if you're putting Baker Mayfield as your franchise quarterback, you don't have to pay the guy a crap ton of money, because there's a blessing and a curse when you have an elite quarterback. If you have an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes, these guys are all-time talented guys that can make up for a bad offensive line, that can make up for not the best wide receiver core, can carry a bad defense or a bad offensive line or a lackluster coaching staff. But that comes at a price. What is that price? Actual financial dollars. You're going to have to eventually pay those guys a crap ton of money unless they agree to take a pay cut, and sometimes these guys aren't willing to do so. And rightfully so, because the NFL is a business, and your career could end on one play. So I don't blame guys that don't take team-friendly discounts. But Baker Mayfield is not going to demand that type of money, nor should he, because Baker Mayfield is not an elite quarterback. So because he's not an elite quarterback, he can't demand elite quarterback money. I mean, technically he can, but more than likely if he does, a team is not going to probably sign him because they're going to say, the price is just way too high. Sorry, Baker. But here's the thing about Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is just starting to enter the prime of his career. He's 28 years old, going to be 29 years old next season. This is the first time we saw Baker Mayfield throw for 4,000 passing yards, had almost 30 touchdowns this season, and this is one of the first times Baker Mayfield has been in a stable situation where the coaching staff believed in him. He had a great defense. He had great wide receivers, and everything was in place for Baker to succeed, and he succeeded. He won a playoff game in Tampa Bay. His first season there, led him to the playoffs, won the division. It seemed like he was a great leader this season, and he's playing some of the best football of his career. I think Baker Mayfield's on an upward trajectory. I don't think this is going to be one of those things where Baker is on such a high and then he'll stalemate next season and rapidly regress. I doubt that's going to happen. Could it happen? Yes, absolutely, because I don't think Baker Mayfield is a franchise-changing quarterback, but I do believe he's a good, well above average franchise quarterback. He's better than the likes of Jimmy Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins, guys that can't really go above and beyond the system. I think that Baker Mayfield can be very similar to Brock Purdy, where his athletic limitations, you're probably not going to put all the offensive responsibilities on him. Kind of needs a head coach to kind of, make sure he's doing the right things and not turning the ball over. But Baker, very similar to Brock Purdy, I believe, can operate at a high level within a system. And if you put a great team around these guys, they can win a lot of games and potentially a Super Bowl. Let's not forget, I think Baker Mayfield is a little bit more talented than people give him credit for. This is a guy that was the first overall pick in a draft class with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. That should tell you all you need to know about how dominant Baker Mayfield was at times at Oklahoma. He had a great, great career. And you could say in hindsight, the Browns are stupid. They should have drafted Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. But Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson needed time to develop their skill set. Baker was NFL ready because he had started, 4 years in college? And let's be real. Josh Allen landed with the Buffalo Bills. Lamar Jackson landed with the Baltimore Ravens. Very stable, well-run organizations. Baker was asked to start early in Cleveland and overcome dysfunction. And Baker's been having to deal with dysfunction pretty much his whole entire career. Multiple head coaches, multiple coordinators, bad offensive lines, bad teams in Carolina and in Cleveland at times. So it's been very, very good to see Baker having success in Tampa Bay, where he had a legitimate team around him and he delivered. I don't think this is going to be a Geno Smith situation where Geno Smith kind of fools the Seattle Seahawks and plays at an MVP level, his first season there, and then flames out into an average quarterback the next season, and then you're kind of looking to potentially move on and upgrade. I think Baker Mayfield is starting to finally hit his stride. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should invest in Baker Mayfield. The only question I have about Baker is, can you succeed not as an underdog? Because now the microscope is on Baker Mayfield. He's no longer an underdog in Tampa Bay. He already beat the Caleb Williams allegations, okay? So now we have to ask the question, what does Baker Mayfield look like with expectations put on his shoulders. I'm excited to see it. I do believe Baker can be a very good starting quarterback with expectations put on his shoulders. And to be honest with you, I could even ask the question, what are the expectations for Baker? Because I still think people doubt Baker and say, oh, Baker's going to come back next year and just fold. He's not going to do so well. So I think Baker Mayfield internally will always have that motivation of he's a doubted short guy that people just don't quite believe in. But I think Baker Mayfield can continue to prove people wrong. And I believe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should invest in Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield will give you that financial freedom to actually build a real roster around him. I truly believe that. And I think Tampa Bay should embrace the quarterback that Baker Mayfield is. No doubt about it. So Jim Harbaugh is now the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. It was very clear the Brandon Staley experiment with the Chargers just flamed out very, very badly. He was not the right head coach to potentially get this Chargers team to a Super Bowl. But here's the thing. We're in year number 5 with Justin Herbert heading into this next season, and Justin Herbert has yet to win a playoff game. Only been to the playoffs one time. Now, I'm not necessarily blaming Justin Herbert for that, but all I'm saying is that's the reality of the situation right here. But here's the thing. Jim Harbaugh, being the Chargers head coach, has now sped up Justin Herbert's Super Bowl clock. The Chargers are speeding up that Super Bowl clock, and they recognize how talented Justin Herbert is. And let me be very clear. Justin Herbert, wildly talented. I mean, we're talking legit 6'6", 6'5", can run around, make every single throw on the field, has an absolute cannon for an arm. He has all the physical tools. And I think his leadership qualities, although a little bit more introverted, I think he checks the box. I think he's a very good leader as well. Now, I would like to see Justin Herbert take the step of being a more vocal leader and demanding more of his teammates. But overall, Justin Herbert, he checks out most of the boxes. Mature, leader, big rocket arm, can move, franchise quarterback for the most part. But when you have a very talented quarterback like Justin Herbert, you need to win playoff games. And even though in the past I've argued Jim Harbaugh is not quite as good as some people have made him out to be, I think he's excellent, no doubt about it. But some people have gone a little bit over the rails with their Harbaugh evaluations, at least when it comes to Jim Harbaugh. But that's neither here nor there. Jim Harbaugh has a legitimate resume, not only in college, but in the NFL as well. And compared to the likes of Anthony Lynn and Brandon Staley, this is a big-time upgrade, and this feels right for the Chargers. Now, there is a scenario where Jim Harbaugh underachieves with the Chargers because I believe expectations are sky high, and you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes is a generational type quarterback. As good as Justin Herbert is, not on the same level of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is already one of the 6 or 7 greatest quarterbacks of all time, in my opinion, and he has a chance to go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. As talented as Justin Herbert is, don't think we'll be having those conversations about him by the time his career is over. But who knows? Maybe we will. But for now, it doesn't seem like we're trending towards that direction. But I will say, everywhere Jim Harbaugh has been, he's had success. He has success at Stanford, has success at Michigan, and obviously in the NFL with the 49ers, he had success as well, leading them to a Super Bowl. Now, he didn't win that Super Bowl, but had a lot of success in San Francisco in a very tough division. And you can make the argument the 49ers probably made a mistake letting Harbaugh go. It was very weird when they fired Harbaugh. It was out of nowhere, and it just seemed like the organization just gave up for no reason on Jim Harbaugh. So, when it comes to this whole Chargers situation, look, there's work to be done. The defense has some holes. The wide receiver core is very expensive, and they need another speed guy to take the top off the defense. I like Mike Williams. I like Keenan Allen, who is wildly still underrated to this day. But I think they need more playmakers for Herbert to make more plays. We thought Quentin Johnson would be this big-time player. Hasn't been that guy. Maybe he will be in the future, but there's a lot of question marks there. So this situation is not a plug-in and, oh, you're going to be in the Super Bowl in the next couple of years. I think that it's going to take some time for Jim Harbaugh to retool and coach up this roster. That's my expectation. Maybe your expectation is different, but all I'm saying is the Chargers, by making this move, show they are serious about Justin Herbert's Super Bowl window. And that Super Bowl clock is now ticking. From now here on out, we're going to be judging Justin Herbert based on how much success he's had in the playoffs. Because we've seen for 4 going on 5 years, very good stats, looks the part, but he doesn't have any playoff success to show for it. And the excuses are out the door because Harbaugh is going to get this team right and in a position to succeed. And you could even argue, compared to the quarterback and the head coach, Jim Harbaugh has the better resume because he's been to a Super Bowl at the NFL level. So why would we blame Jim Harbaugh when he's been to a Super Bowl without Justin Herbert? Justin Herbert hasn't won a playoff game up to this point. So I don't think I'm going to blame the head coach that's been to a Super Bowl. I'm going to probably blame the ultra-talented quarterback who maybe just can't get it done. So we're going to find out a lot about Justin Herbert and also Jim Harbaugh in this iteration with the Chargers. Can it work? I do believe it can work, but the Chargers cap situation, as far as financial status, not very good. They're way over the cap. They don't have a lot of money to spend in free agency. They're going to have to cut some star players. And overall, this roster needs some retooling. The offensive line could use some work. The wide receiver core could use some work. And even the defense could use some work. But in the NFL, as we've seen in the past, if you have a talented head coach and a talented quarterback, you can go pretty far in the National Football League, So it's good to see that the Chargers invested in a high-end coach to help out Justin Herbert. But the pressure's on both Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert now because that Super Bowl clock has officially sped up now that these two are collaborating together with the Chargers. And boy, oh boy, am I excited to watch and see how things go down in LA with Herbert and Harbaugh running the ship. I want to briefly touch on Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, roughly about a week ago, here in the 2024 season, scored 70 points in only 37 minutes played versus the San Antonio Spurs and versus young phenom Victor Wembanyama. It was very, very impressive. One of the more impressive games I've ever seen, not just in terms of basketball, but sports history. This is one of the greatest games that an NBA player has ever had. And this is the highest scoring game that has ever occurred in the history of the Philadelphia 76ers. And for some context, the Philadelphia 76ers have seen the likes of Dr. J walk through their building, Allen Iverson walk through their building, Wilt Chamberlain walk through their building. And who scored the most points in a single game in Sixers history? It is Joel Embiid. And I think it's very clear that Joel Embiid is going to win back-to-back MVPs. A lot of people argued about his MVP last season, saying, oh, Nikola Jokic should have won the MVP award. And I understand that Jokic nearly averaged a triple-double, and he was excellent last season. But I legitimately thought Joel Embiid on both ends of the court proved himself last year, and I felt Embiid was a worthy MVP candidate. I understand he flamed out in the playoffs, but the MVP award is about what you're doing in the regular season. And I always say it's not necessarily who's the most valuable player. It's about the most valuable performance within a given season, because the MVP award is rehashed every single season. No one's going to argue that Russell Westbrook is a better player than LeBron James, but in that given season when Russell Westbrook was averaging a triple-double, he outperformed LeBron James. He outperformed Stephen Curry. He outperformed Kevin Durant. So I was okay with Russell Westbrook winning MVP. And, you had a guy like Luka who maybe could win the MVP award this year. I thought Kevin Durant was starting to insert himself into that conversation. But I think it's pretty clear Joel Embiid is probably going to win that award this season for back-to-back years. I mean, the guy is averaging 36 points per game as we speak today on crazy efficiency. He's been one of the 10 best defensive players in the NBA, according to the advanced metrics, and the eye test has been there as well. And let me just say very quickly, I know Hakeem Olajuwon is in the conversation for most skilled big man of all time. Obviously, you have to throw in Nikola Jokic into that conversation. Shaq was very talented. You know, even a guy like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who to me is the greatest center of all time when you put together talent and resume. But it's not crazy to say that just from a skill set and a talent perspective, Joel Embiid is starting to force his way into that Hakeem Olajuwon, Nikola Jokic conversation at the very least. I mean, maybe don't compare him to Shaq or Kareem, but as far as talent and skill level, as far as dominance, when he wants to be dominant, Joel Embiid is as good as anyone, quite frankly. I mean, maybe not everyone, but he's really, really talented. But here's the thing. Joel Embiid's dominance is kind of a blessing in disguise because now that Joel Embiid is more dominant than ever, the pressure is on Joel Embiid more than ever to win an NBA championship. Or heck, make at least one deep playoff run. Because here's the thing, people. Joel Embiid needs to at least have one deep playoff run before his career is over. We're in year number 8 for Joel Embiid. And so far, he is the only MVP winner in NBA history to have never made a conference finals, aka the Final Four. Never led his team to being one of the Final Four teams in the postseason. And it's kind of mind-boggling based on how talented Joel Embiid is. And I understand that in the past, he's had excuses of, oh, Ben Simmons is a shell of himself. He's potentially a bust. Oh, Brett Brown is a fraudulent postseason head coach. James Harden is very talented, but can often be a headache. Oh, you look right now, and all those excuses are out the window. Joel Embiid, your time is now, buddy. You're smack dead in the prime of your career. It is time for you to go against Giannis Antetokounmpo and refuse to lose. It is time for you to potentially see a Nikola Jokic in an NBA Finals and say, I refuse to lose. Joel Embiid, go on a deep playoff run. You're talented enough. You're good enough. And you have the supporting cast now. Nick Nurse, championship level head coach. Tyrese Maxey, one of the best young point guards in the NBA. A great second option up to this point. Tobias Harris, he's had his ups and downs, but he's a good number 3 option. And the Philadelphia 76ers have a lot of depth. Every time I look at their roster and I look at the games that are being played, they've got shooters galore. They've got guys that can defend, guys that are scrappy and can rebound. They know their role. If Joel Embiid dominates in the playoffs, there's no reason to believe the 76ers can't make a deep postseason run and ultimately win a championship. One of the biggest reasons why Philadelphia has underachieved in the Joel Embiid era is because of Joel Embiid himself. Situations where he's getting outplayed by Trae Young in the playoffs. And I think Trae Young is excellent. So this is not a knock on Embiid, but Joel Embiid, you're 7 foot tall. You're this big, strong, dominant guy. You shouldn't be getting dominated by a Trae Young-led Hawks team. You look at Jason Tatum and the Celtics. Yes, they're very talented, but you had the Celtics on the ropes last year. I think you're better than Tatum. You're more talented. It's time for you to put up or shut up. So, yes, Joel Embiid being at his best, it's a great thing to see. And he is rapidly moving up these all-time rankings, even despite not having a championship on his resume. You don't have to have a championship to be an all-time great Hall of Fame level player. But looking back on history, as long as Joel Embiid continues to stay healthy, it will be very, very disappointing if Joel Embiid can never make potentially one deep postseason run before his NBA career is over. So my message to Joel Embiid is, you're probably going to win multiple MVPs in the regular season. You're a dominant force. you potentially can go down in the history books as good as Nikola Jokic if you accomplish what you need to accomplish. And you're more than capable. And Joel Embiid, the world is watching because you're talented enough and there are no more excuses. You've got a championship level head coach. You've got a great supporting cast. The time is now for you to potentially win an NBA championship. And I'm excited to see if you can do it. And I believe potentially if you're healthy, you have a good chance to do so, but we'll see. Well, folks, that's pretty much all I had today. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Jamal McKinney. Have a God bless day. Stay safe, everyone. And I'm Ghost.